all right, you know what time it is. Neil Ratner Rock Doc here with a story. So, this past week in August of 1964, the Animals released the song House of the Rising Sun, one of the most iconic songs in the history of rock and roll. So today, I thought I would tell you a few things about the Animals and the song that you might not know. And as usual, a little background first. Yeah. So, the tune is actually a traditional English folk ballad, and the first recordings were done in the late 20s. Now, in addition to the Animals, the song has been covered many times by artists including Leadbelly, Woody Guthrie, Nina Simone, Dave Van Ronk, and Bob Dylan, just to name a few. And if you were in a band back in the day, you probably played the song. I know I did many, many times. All right, now, the Animals' lead singer, Eric Burdon, first heard the song in a pub in Newcastle where it was being sung by folk singer Johnny Handel. But it was Bob Dylan's extended version that interested Burdon, and that's the version that he started doing with the Animals. And the Animals closed their set with Rising Sun. And every night, the tune got a tremendous audience reaction, convincing Eric that the group needed to record the song as soon as possible. Mickey Most was the Animals' producer, and he wasn't so sure, but he reluctantly agreed. Now, he had already booked a studio in London for the TV show Ready, Steady, Go. And he knew that he'd have a little bit of time left at the end, and he could record the Animals doing that tune. Now, the day of the session, the Animals actually played a gig in Liverpool. Then they loaded their equipment, drove to London, quickly set up. They didn't have a lot of time. They had one run through, and they recorded House of the Rising Sun in one take, in mono, with no overdubs. Now, as recorded, though, House of the Rising Sun ran 4.5 minutes, which was regarded as far too long for a pop single at the time. Now, most who initially didn't even want to record the song said that on this occasion, everything was in the right place. It only took 15 minutes to make, so I can't take much credit for the production. He was nonetheless now a believer and declared it a single at its full length, saying, "We're in a micro groove world now. We'll release it as is." But in the US, it was a bit of a different story because Rising Sun was too long for radio airplay. This was before FM, we're talking AM, right? So it was edited, and a few weeks later, it was #1 all over the world, and it even knocked the Beatles out of the top spot in the US. Now, when Dylan recorded House of the Rising Sun, he did it as a folk song. And Dylan was freaked out and amazed when he heard what the Animals did with the song a few years later, because it showed him that you could put a rock rhythm to a folk song. Very important for Dylan. To hear that started him thinking, well, I could do the same thing. You know the rest of the story, right? Bob brought an electric guitar and freaked everyone out at Newport a year later in '65 with his first electric set. A lot of that had to do with listening to the Animals, how they took a folk song and made it an electric rock and roll song, and Dylan, of course, did the same. Now, according to Eric Burdon, Dylan was angry at first, but turned it into a rocker and went electric in the shadow of the Animals' classic House of the Rising Sun. Yeah, so how about that? That's my story. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll have more stories as the days go on. You know where to find me around the internet. And as I always like to tell you, always remember to keep on rocking. All right. Bye for now.